It's day 53 of 118 days with the Tudors, and today we're thinking about 1537. This year we see the birth of Prince Edward. Henry VIII finally gets a son, also the death of Jane Seymour. So apologies, it's been quite a gloomy few days. So to rewind slightly to 1536, on the 19th of May, Cranmer issues a special dispensation for Henry to be allowed to marry Jane Seymour. Incidentally, also the same day that Anne Boleyn is executed. The dispensation is because he is loosely related to Jane Seymour, their fifth cousin, so they need special permission to marry. Henry always needs special permission to marry, doesn't he? And the next day they're betrothed. They are then married on the 30th of May 1536 in a very private ceremony in the Queen's closet at Whitechapel. Then let's get to our year in question, 1537. It does take a little while for Jane Seymour to fall pregnant. She's pregnant by the February of 1537. As we've talked about before, while they may suspect that the woman is pregnant, they can't really celebrate it until the quickening, so until the baby starts to kick. And as I've said before, this is because until they actually feel the movement of the baby, they can't be sure that there's just not something else gone wrong with the woman's body. Around the April, Henry discusses the pregnancy with the council, and it gradually becomes leaked around the court. And then on Trinity Sunday, which is the 27th of May, so about a year after they're married, they officially are celebrating her pregnancy, and it's celebrated with bonfires and hymns and sermons and that sort of thing. Now, she didn't have a coronation, by the way, after her wedding. There were plans for her to have her coronation in the autumn, but they got delayed because of an outbreak of plague, and we all know how Henry feels about illness, plague in particular. So she goes into confinement on the 16th of September. Edward is then born. Prince Edward is born on the 12th of October, so almost a month she's been there waiting for him. The labour is quite difficult. It lasts 2 days and 3 nights. She gives birth to a healthy son, Prince Edward, at 2 a.m. on the 12th of October. The king joins Jane then at Hampton Court and obviously is delighted. The name Edward is chosen because he's born on the eve of the feast of the translation of Edward the Confessor. Managed to say that without looking at my notes. Later on in the reign of Elizabeth I, Nicholas Sanders, who's responsible for a lot of myths that go around, he popularises the idea that Edward was born by a caesarean section, and that's just not true. She wouldn't have survived at all had that have happened. So it was a normal birth as far as we can tell, albeit a difficult one. And to start with, Jane seems okay. He was baptised on the 15th of October in the chapel at Hampton Court, and his godfathers were Archbishop Cranmer, the Duke of Norfolk, and the Princess Mary was godmother. And apparently the Queen's brother, Edward, who, don't forget, was part of the team who brought down Anne, carries the 4.5-year-old Princess Elizabeth, or maybe not princess as she is currently, but you know what I mean, Anne Boleyn's daughter, through the baptism, which I find a very odd image, the man who's partly responsible for her mother's death carrying her through the baptism. Now, fairly soon after this, Jane starts to become unwell. Historians have argued over what's wrong with her. Some have suggested some sort of perpetual fever. The most common theory now is that some of the placenta remained after birth, leading to septicemia. So on the 24th of October, they could tell that her life was definitely in danger. And Rob Aldrich, the Bishop of Carlisle, arrives to give her extreme unction, so to give her kind of the last rites. Now the king suspects that things aren't going to turn out very well. He cancels a hunting trip so that he can be nearby. She manages her last rites, and she passed away just before midnight on the 24th of October 1537. She was aged 28. Now, it's not known whether Henry actually was at her side when she died, but it is written that he was incredibly grief-stricken. He went away from Hampton Court the next day, saying he couldn't be near her body, and locked himself away. He also wore mourning clothes until well after Christmas, and this was the only wife that he wore mourning clothes for. Jane had seen what happened to Catherine. She had seen what happened to Anne, and she was very conservative. She didn't want to rock the boat. She wanted to make sure that she was safe in her position. And historian Elizabeth Norton has written that Jane's great irony is she died just after her position became secure. In the space of 18 months, Henry has lost Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, 3 wives, and his illegitimate son, Henry Fitzroy. Now, even if he only felt a scrap of emotion for any of those, what a horrendous year. And yeah, he's to blame for some of it. Yeah, I just find that staggering. So that's 1537. We have a birth and a death in very close together. I will see you tomorrow for 1538.